the elegant lakeside garden. Restaurant was filled with the gentle sound of conversations, soft piano music, and the warm glow of afternoon sunlight pouring through its floor-to-ceiling glass windows. Families enjoyed lunch while business executives discussed million-dollar deals over expensive meals. At a quiet table near the window sat Ethan Carter, a humble single, father and former Navy SEAL. Since leaving the military after losing his wife several years earlier, Ethan had dedicated his entire life to raising his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Wearing a simple sage green Henley shirt and jeans, he smiled as Lily happily colored pictures in her sketchbook between bites of her lunch. To everyone around them, they looked like an ordinary father and daughter enjoying a peaceful afternoon together. Across the restaurant, black luxury SUVs pulled into the entrance one after another. Security personnel stepped out first before opening the door for Victoria Sinclair, one of the youngest female billionaires in the country and CEO of Sinclair Global Industries. Every employee immediately stood straighter as she entered the restaurant with her 8-year-old daughter, Emily. Unlike Victoria, who was admired for her brilliant business mind, Emily had become known for something heartbreaking. Nearly 3 years earlier, after surviving a terrible accident that claimed her father's life, the little girl had stopped speaking completely. Doctors, therapists, psychologists, and speech specialists from around the world had tried everything, but Emily had never spoken another word. Victoria had spent millions searching for a solution, yet every visit ended with the same painful silence. Even now, Emily quietly held her mother's hand, avoiding eye contact with everyone around her. The restaurant manager personally escorted Victoria and Emily to a nearby table, only a few feet away from Ethan and Lily. While waiting for their meals, Lily accidentally dropped a box of colored pencils. Bright pencils rolled across the polished wooden floor, stopping near Emily's shoes. Ethan immediately stood to collect them, but before he could reach them, Emily quietly bent down and carefully picked up every pencil herself. She walked over to Lily and handed them back with a gentle smile. "Thank you," Lily said cheerfully. Ethan smiled warmly at the little girl. "That was very kind of you." Emily looked into Ethan's calm eyes for several long seconds. Something about his peaceful voice and gentle smile seemed strangely familiar. Victoria watched silently, expecting her daughter to simply return to the table as she always did. Instead, Emily continued staring at Ethan. Then, for the first time in 3 years, the little girl slowly opened her mouth and softly whispered, "Daddy." The entire restaurant froze. Glasses stopped halfway to people's lips. Waiters stood motionless. Victoria's eyes widened in complete disbelief as tears instantly filled them. She rushed to her daughter, unable to believe what she had just heard. Every doctor had said this moment might never come. Yet somehow, her silent daughter had spoken. To a complete stranger? For a moment, the restaurant became completely silent. Every conversation stopped as dozens of stunned customers turned toward the little girl. Victoria dropped to her knees in front of Emily, gently holding her shoulders as tears streamed down her face. "Emily," she whispered with a trembling voice. "Sweetheart, did you just speak?" But Emily didn't answer her mother. Instead, her wide eyes remained fixed on Ethan. It was as though she recognized something no one else could see. Ethan looked surprised but remained calm, kneeling to Emily's eye level with the same gentle smile he had shown Lily moments earlier. "Hi," he said softly. "I'm Ethan." Emily didn't seem frightened. Instead, she slowly stepped closer until she was standing directly in front of him. Lily watched curiously while clutching her sketchbook. Victoria could barely breathe. For 3 long years, her daughter had refused to speak to doctors, therapists, relatives, or even close friends. Yet now she had spoken a single word to a man she had never met. The restaurant manager quietly asked the surrounding guests to give the family some space, but no one wanted to leave. Everyone sensed they were witnessing something extraordinary. Victoria looked at Ethan with tear-filled eyes. I don't understand," she admitted. "She's been silent since her father's accident. She hasn't spoken to anyone, not even me." Ethan's expression softened with compassion. "I'm very sorry," he replied quietly. "Children carry pain differently than adults. Sometimes they don't need someone to ask questions. Sometimes they just need someone who makes them feel safe. Victoria stared at him in surprise. His words weren't those of a therapist. They carried the calm confidence of someone who had lived through deep loss himself. Just then, Emily slowly reached out and wrapped her tiny fingers around Ethan's hand. The simple gesture brought fresh tears to Victoria's eyes. Lily smiled warmly and moved her chair closer. "Would you like to color with me?" she asked kindly. Emily looked at the crayons on the table, then gave the smallest nod. For the next several minutes, the two little girls quietly colored together while Ethan and Victoria watched in amazement. It was the first time in years that Emily had willingly interacted with another child. Victoria finally broke the silence. "Mr. Carter, would you mind telling me about yourself?" Ethan looked down at Lily before answering. "I served as a Navy SEAL for many years. After my wife passed away, I left the military because my daughter needed her father more than my country needed another soldier." Victoria's eyes widened. Suddenly, everything made sense. The quiet confidence, the gentle patience, the calm presence. This wasn't just an ordinary single father. Before she could say another word, Emily looked up from her drawing, turned toward Ethan once more, and softly whispered another sentence that no one expected to hear. "Will you come back tomorrow?" The restaurant fell silent once again, and Victoria realized this chance meeting might become the miracle she had spent years praying for. The following afternoon, Ethan returned to Lakeside Garden Restaurant at exactly the same time, keeping the quiet promise he had never actually spoken aloud. Lily skipped happily beside him, carrying her sketchbook and a new box of colored pencils she wanted to share with Emily. As they entered the restaurant, Victoria was already waiting near the window with her daughter. She had barely slept the previous night, replaying the incredible moment Emily had spoken for the first time in 3 years. The instant Emily saw Ethan walk through the entrance, a gentle smile appeared on her face. Without hesitation, she ran across the dining room and wrapped her little arms around him. Several customers who had witnessed the previous day's miracle watched in amazement. Ethan smiled warmly and hugged her gently before kneeling to her height. "Good afternoon, Emily," he said softly. She looked into his eyes for a moment before quietly replying. "Hi, Ethan." Victoria covered her mouth with both hands as tears filled her eyes once again. It was only the second time Emily had spoken since the accident, and this time she had spoken even more clearly. The four of them spent lunch together like old friends. Lily and Emily colored pictures, laughed quietly, and exchanged crayons while Ethan and Victoria talked for the first time. Victoria admitted that despite building one of the country's largest companies, she had felt completely helpless whenever she looked at her daughter's silent face. "I bought the best hospitals, the best specialists, and the best therapy money could find," she confessed. "But none of it brought my little girl back." Ethan listened patiently before answering. Sometimes healing doesn't begin when someone finds the perfect treatment. Sometimes it begins when someone finally feels safe enough to stop carrying their fear alone. Victoria looked at him with quiet admiration. "You speak like a psychologist." Ethan smiled faintly. "No, just a father who knows what it's like to lose someone you love." Just then, a loud crash echoed through the restaurant as a waiter accidentally dropped a heavy serving tray. Plates shattered across the floor. The sudden noise caused Emily to freeze in terror, her body trembling as painful memories of the accident flooded back. Several diners stood in alarm, but before anyone could react, Ethan calmly stepped beside her and gently placed one reassuring hand on her shoulder. His voice remained steady and gentle. "You're safe, Emily. Look at me. Just breathe." Emily stared into his calm eyes, and within seconds her breathing slowed. The panic disappeared almost as quickly as it had begun. Victoria watched the entire moment in disbelief. Every therapist had struggled for years to calm Emily during panic attacks. Yet Ethan had done it with nothing more than patience and quiet reassurance. At that moment, Victoria realized this meeting wasn't simply a coincidence. There was something extraordinary about the humble single father sitting across from her, and she was determined to discover the truth about the man whose presence had accomplished what years of money and medicine never could. Victoria couldn't stop thinking about Ethan after that afternoon. Before leaving the restaurant, she quietly asked one of her security officers to learn more about him, not to invade his privacy, but because she needed to understand how an ordinary single father had succeeded, where the world's greatest specialist had failed. The next morning, the report arrived. As Victoria read through the file, her eyes filled with disbelief. Ethan Carter wasn't just a quiet father raising his daughter alone. He was a highly decorated former Navy SEAL who had served on some of the military's most dangerous rescue missions. After his wife's passing, he had voluntarily left the service to devote his life to Lily. Despite his remarkable past, he now lived modestly, worked an ordinary job, volunteered at a local veterans center, and never spoke about his military achievements. Victoria slowly closed the file, realizing the strongest man she had ever met was also the most humble. A few days later, she invited Ethan and Lily to lunch at the same restaurant where everything had begun. This time, Emily was waiting by the entrance instead of hiding behind her mother. The moment Ethan walked inside, she smiled brightly and ran to greet him. Holding his hand, she led him back to the table before looking up with shining eyes. Then, in a clear voice that echoed through the quiet restaurant, she said, "Thank you for helping me find my voice." Every person nearby turned toward the little girl. Victoria covered her face as tears rolled down her cheeks. She had dreamed of hearing her daughter speak full sentences again, but she had almost given up hope. Lily hugged Emily tightly while Ethan simply smiled, grateful to see the little girl healing one step at a time. When lunch ended, Victoria stood and faced Ethan. "Mr. Carter," she said sincerely, "I've spent years believing money could solve every problem, but you taught me that compassion, patience, and genuine kindness can accomplish what wealth cannot. I can never repay what you've done for my daughter." Ethan gently shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." Emily found her own courage. "I only reminded her that she was never alone." Victoria smiled through her tears before extending her hand. "Then allow me to do one thing. I'd like you to lead a children's resilience foundation our company is creating to help families dealing with trauma, not because you were a Navy SEAL, but because you're an extraordinary father." Ethan looked at Lily, who smiled proudly and nodded. He accepted with quiet gratitude. As the afternoon sunlight filled the restaurant, Emily laughed while coloring beside Lily, her cheerful voice now filling the room that had once witnessed only silence. Customers smiled as they watched the two little girls play together, unaware they were witnessing the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Ethan realized that his greatest mission had never been the dangerous operations he completed in the military. His greatest mission had always been giving hope to children who believed they had lost it. And as Victoria watched her daughter laugh freely for the first time in years, she understood that the most valuable people in the world are often the ones who never seek recognition.